Hey everyone, and welcome to the AI Leadership Podcast. I'm your host, Sam Joseph, and today we're very lucky to have technologist Sebastian Beschke on the podcast. Sebastian, welcome.
Good to be here.
Great stuff. Well, let's jump straight into the our first question. What's your technology origin story?
Okay, so I got my first computer when I was still in elementary school. That
Mm.
was, I don't know, something my dad brought home from the office, and it was a 286.
Oh yeah.
Um, and yeah, I don't know, that ended up in my bedroom and got me hooked sort of
Mm.
instantly. Back then you had to it was MS-DOS, so you had to type stuff to access games
Right.
and everything.
Yeah.
Um, and Yeah, then a little bit later along in school, I had a friend who we sort of taught each other programming in
Mm.
QBasic at first. That was another
Hmm.
thing, another great thing about MS-DOS is that QBasic on it, and you
Mm.
could immediately write programs. Um, yeah, I don't know. Throughout high school, I was interested in game development, so taught myself a lot there, and also had a couple of friends, luckily, with the same interests. So
Mm.
towards the end of high school, we were participating in game jams and stuff like that.
Mm.
Um, so I guess then it was already pretty clear I was going towards computer science, and that's what I did after high school.
Right.
Um, Studied computer science, and then um, yeah, I guess that is where I discovered um, that I also really like the theoretical side
Hmm.
of computer science. Um, and Also got interested in computational linguistics, which is what I got a PhD in the end.
Mm. Mm.
So one question that kind of bugged me back then was what is the actual difference between a computer language and a human language?
Mm.
Or I mean, it's kind of clear what the difference is. One is a formal language and the other isn't.
Right.
Um, but obviously, the whole theory of formal languages comes out of linguistics originally,
Mm.
right? So there is like it emerged as an attempt to describe natural languages,
Mm.
and I was interested in learning more about where they are similar and dissimilar to each
Mm.
other.
Mm. Mm.
Mm, so I don't know. I guess at one point I realized, okay, making games um, um, is nice, but probably not going to be my career.
Mm.
Also, perhaps because in the end, I don't necessarily have the right skill set, like in terms of creativity, in terms of kind of big picture
Mm.
designing things for an enjoyable experience, sort of.
Mm.
Um, um, I did have more of a knack for kind of the theoretical side, and that's where I went then.
Yeah, yeah, cool. I mean, I did a master's in computational linguistics. I forget what it was, cognitive science and natural linguistics. I'm forgetting the title of it now. And I was around a lot of people doing computational linguistics, and I sort of did a little bit on the theoretical side there. But then I was sort of like, I was like into more into the neural networks and the neuroscience. So, but I think it's a really interesting. It's just, particularly, I think, I was doing that, gosh, was it 30 years ago? And at the time, that was, I think the received wisdom was like, yes, it'll be understanding this theory that will somehow allow us to ultimately, computationally, have things fluently generate languages. And that hasn't really panned out. And this different approach has arisen, hasn't it? It's very strange.
But I'm really not sure about that. I mean, by the time I was working on my PhD, um, I mean that was pre the deep learning revolution. That
Yeah,
is when I started in
right.
2012.
Mm,
Um, there were just sort of the signs of like what neural networks would
mm,
become, but at the
mm.
time weren't, right?
Yeah,
So
yeah,
like machine translation was really mapping phrases in one language to like you would build huge dictionaries, right, of
right, right.
phrases that we translated into each other, and then building models that would piece together the sentences. And I back even back then it wasn't this or that. It wasn't black or white.
Mm,
Um, it was a bit of both. You need some machine learning because there are just too many, like there are too many patterns for you to be able to um, to comprehensively write them down,
Mm,
right? To design the systems that would implement them. Too
mm,
many rules and exceptions to the rules, and then exceptions to the exceptions.
mm,
And
mm,
um, so you need this learning component to learn from language data,
right.
but you do need theory to inform the system that you build. You do need, if you want to, I mean, if you want to break down sentences into pieces, you need to understand how sentences are, you know, what are um, the phrase types of phrases you can have, and how do you piece together a working sentence, right? What sort of computational structure do you have to build so that you can design a machine learning system that works on that kind of structure?
Well, interesting that you say that. I mean, I guess I should also mention you're a fantastic member of the Rebel AI community, and we've already been having exciting conversations related to AI this week. But there's an interesting little tangent here. I mean, I hear what you're saying. I guess from my perspective, and I was doing my master's and PhD in the 90s, and it, I guess when I look at the architecture of the transformer, it doesn't particularly seem to be informed by anything from theoretical linguistics. I mean, I think we could argue that some of those structures and those rules and the exceptions to the exceptions kind of get encoded into the structure of the multi-layer network, and with the attention as a result of being exposed to like huge amounts of language. But I think that was the irony from my perspective, is that not that there isn't some value in some contexts from understanding the theory of all of this thing, but that ultimately the system that now, independently of what one thinks of AI and its abilities and so on, it can clearly generate, fluent language that is kind of coherent in a way that 20 and 30 years ago was just, wasn't available. And it seems to have done that without having to explicitly encode any of the theoretical things that we know about language, right?
True, like yeah, by and large, right? It's yes, it models language in a very coarse manner. Basically, it is a sequence of symbols, right? That is like the most kind of generic modeling of
Right.
language that you can do. Yeah, that's true. Um, I mean, I guess I wouldn't say it's true that it is not at all informed by linguistic theory, just alone the way it breaks words down into tokens, for example, this kind of thing. Like I think. But yes, it is very much designed for efficient computation and not for like theoretical coherence. But that was like, I mean, that was the case before Transformers. And I guess the surprising development of the time was that these approaches that modeled less theory were becoming more and more um, successful and more successful than the more kind of thorough, grounded in theory approaches, right?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, and I think that was, like, to take it back to earlier, I think there was in the 20th century, particularly with things like, for example, the development of the atom bomb, they were very much theory first. They were, I mean, I don't know so much about it, but like I think throughout the 20th century, there was this big focus on you need to understand, exactly what's going on. And then as a result of your wonderful understanding, you'll be able to actually create these things of amazing power, in which, not just the, atomic weapons, but all sorts of things were created. And there's been this slight trend towards now systems that we don't necessarily even understand exactly how they work internally, but due to access of huge loads of data, they're, I mean, the latest set of like remarkably performing things seem to be based more on this kind of like huge amounts of data than necessarily the understanding of the detailed operation of how they work internally, which is a kind of counterintuitive. Anyway, but I was going to say, yeah. So you did your PhD in computational linguistics, and then came out, and you were saying, you realized, games was not the direction for you. Where did that then take you, going on? Bring us up to speed with where you're up to now.
Yeah, so I mean, towards the end of finishing my PhD, I um yeah, was sort of looking around in the job market, and so another thing that's always been a part of my life, or not always, but I don't know, for many years at that time,
Mm,
um, was sustainability. Um,
Mm,
so one, um, yeah, that is one thing that I've always wanted to combine also with my professional work. So that had been kind of a private interest. I was um, I don't know, like talking about it in my free time with
mm,
friends. I even founded my own little NGO with some people back then.
mm,
Um, but I wanted to make it a part of what I was doing. And
mhm,
yeah, I was lucky to find a little startup that was really just getting started, just a few months old,
mhm,
um, who had the vision to um, help basically business become sustainable with
mhm,
software, which is
mhm,
kind of and it kind of struck me, okay, this is the place for me to be. This
mhm,
is kind
mhm.
of um, where I can have an impact, right? Because if like thinking about impact, whatever you can do in your free time is necessarily limited,
Mm,
and like going into the real economy with some purpose is like a much bigger lever for a person to scale the impact,
sure.
right? So that was my motivation at the time. I started there in kind of an ML engineering researchy sort of role. Um, so the company is called Code Gaia.
Mm,
Um, Gaia like Mother Earth and code
mhm,
because we are um, building software. Obviously, we're building software for that helps companies manage their sustainability.
wonderful.
So they can compute their carbon footprint.
Mhm,
They can create sustainability reports. They can plan their transition to net zero. Um,
brilliant.
that is why people or companies buy the software.
Mhm,
Um, and back then, I was doing research and yeah, like early work on document processing.
mm,
So data extraction from documents. You would say it's boring stuff, but
mm,
um, I mean, there's a purpose behind it, right? Like for
sure,
me, the purpose has always been the more important part than, is this mundane or whatever. And
sure.
document processing at the time, that was before like LLMs could do it, for example,
Right.
right? You still had to train models.
Mhm,
Um, and run like OCR tools like Tesseract or something
yeah.
that is kind of aged by now.
Mhm,
But
mhm,
that's what I was doing back then. Um, Luckily, the company was successful
mm,
uh, and grew, and we hired more engineers. And then um, my role became to actually manage the engineering team. So nowadays, I'm head of engineering.
mm, mm,
I still have a good part of the responsibility for the AI stuff that we are doing. I have
mhm,
one colleague who is also kind of 100% focused on AI and machine learning and data science
mm.
stuff. The rest of the team are software engineers.
Oh, brilliant stuff. Well, it makes me think of several things. One, I think in our Python leadership group, we're going to be having a roundtable, online roundtable in December on green code, which just made me think of that. And yeah, I mean, I've just finished up a couple of years with a company that was all about similar sort of sustainability in the construction industry. And yeah, certainly my motivation as well is like you want to have that bigger lever. You spend so much of your time at work if you can be, having that impact. That's fantastic. Yeah, yeah. And you were mentioning the AI. It leads us nicely into our next question, which is like, how is AI affecting your life and work? Obviously, it's a central part of the work. So I'd love to hear more, to what extent you can share on that, but also, how it's affecting your life outside of work. I think people are sometimes confused about what I'm asking here, but I've just had a couple of examples this week in that. So kind of like I had a issue with the light fitting in my son's bedroom, and it was like not just changing the light bulb, like the kind of the fitting in the ceiling needed to be replaced. And I took photos of it and sent it to GPT-5, and effectively got the particular type of light fitting, and I now ordered the correct light fitting and got that all done. There was some other example, but that's a good enough one. But I think it's really interesting the way that AI is impacting things outside of work. So would love to hear, if you have any stories of how AI is affecting just normal life, and of course, all of the good work stuff that you can share.
Hmm. Normal life, to be honest, I try to have it affect me as little as possible.
Fair enough. Fair enough.
I'm pretty strongly in the camp of this is just another tool, and I don't want it
Mm.
messing with me when I don't need it, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
Um, Obviously, um, that said, I do kind of seek and find use cases for it. Let's say, so I've I started taking French classes
Oh
this
yeah.
semester, and
Hmm.
um, and what happened was I got the textbook. I wanted to learn the vocabulary. I had to transcribe it. So then the easiest way to get it into like Anki, like a vocabulary app,
Right. Right.
was to send it to Gemini and have it transcribe the
Hmm.
the
Hmm.
scans of the pages from the book. Like this is something that I would previously have spent, I don't know, a few hours typing all of that in,
Right. Right.
right? Um, I don't know, this kind of thing.
Yeah, yeah, no, great. It's always lovely to hear about people's, what they're doing outside work, and how the new AI that just some of the things that you might not have even tried before because you'd be like you say, oh God, that's going to take 2 or 3 hours. Will I even bother to do that? It's
Mhm.
changing the calculus, isn't it, of like what you might and might not do.
Sometimes I haven't, so that is the one thing I haven't really seen in my daily life so much where it changes the calculus. Like
Hmm.
this is something I would have been happy to type it in, right?
Oh, okay, fair enough. No, fair enough.
Um, I've done the previously. Learning language is another one of my kind of hobbies, or has been for some time.
Cool. Yeah.
So I'm fine doing that.
Yeah, yeah,
Um,
and there is actually some value from that sometimes. Like, and this is I mean, the double-edged sword is that sometimes if you ask the AI to do it all for you, you're not kind of like touching moment to moment what's happening, and that sometimes whether the data for personal or for work, actually being really close up and doing each thing individually gives you an insight that you wouldn't get if you let an AI helper do it for you.
yeah, I mean for transcribing scans, like I would say that is a fairly benign use case, and like
Yeah.
all things considered, like yeah. Um, where I think AI is changing the calculus is in the software world. I think that is
Mm.
like one of the best developed use cases for AI. That like
Yeah.
also that's the industry I'm familiar with. I'm not familiar with other industries that
Sure.
much, but in software development, I do see a significant impact. And interestingly, I mean, I have this theory. Um, Obviously, software engineers are early adopters of all these AI tools.
Mm.
Like,
Hmm.
generally, I mean, people are curious about tools anyway.
Right.
At least in our company, like
Hmm.
most people, have been really eager to try new things out.
Hmm.
Um, my impression is that the impact outside of software engineering might be even bigger. Like,
Hmm. Hmm.
um, software engineering, in the sense of this is something you have to find somebody who knows how to do this
Hmm.
black magic of software engineering.
Right.
You have to tell them in excruciating detail
Right.
what you want. As a
Hmm.
result, you have to pay them well, and
Mm.
you have to live with them. I don't know, um, being, I don't know, taking twice the time they said they would, and
Or
stuff
yeah,
like
well,
that, right?
things, yeah.
So I mean, software engineering has been a phenomenally expensive activity
Right.
in that sense, right? If you're like from the perspective of somebody who wants some software but doesn't know how to do it themselves.
Yeah.
Um, I think some of that might be changing with AI. So what I'm observing is that people who are maybe somehow adjacent to software engineering, including people in our company, product
Right.
managers maybe, or like our sustainability specialists, right,
Mm. Mm.
are really quick to catch on to some of these AI tools, like
Hmm.
I don't know, Devin for vibe coding,
Right.
or Lovable for building, for example, prototypes, right? They have an idea.
Hmm.
Here's
Hmm.
how we could solve this particular problem in our domain,
Right.
and they can just sit down and talk it out with the AI,
Right.
and then come maybe to the engineering team with a much better idea of what they want.
Right.
Um,
Yeah. Well, that was the fascinating thing you were saying in the Rebel AI crit on Wednesday is yeah, the non-technical people were now using this to sort of accelerate the process, which is really interesting. Yeah, and I guess is it early days to say whether there is some challenges there? I mean, in my own, I think, I mean, I'm using AI a lot for software development at the moment, and I still feel like I'm sort of discovering when it's working well and when it's not like universally a good. I think I would, there's definitely various caveats that one has to, which we could get into to more. But I'm really interested in this use case. I mean, I've sort of in my personal time for certain things like video editing or what have you, I've like vibe coded systems, like which have definitely delivered some value for me. I mean, I'm a little worried about how sustainable they will be in the long term, but in my, they put like side projects, and I know, yeah, people are doing things in these companies. But you were describing there, you think it's particularly valuable, perhaps not to create a lasting piece of software, but just to create almost like a sort of, one might have used a Miro board before, is to create sort of like an interactive prototype that means that can really scaffold the conversation with when it comes to actually interacting with the software engineers. Is that right?
I think maybe what could happen is that we see like a new type of software which is um, maybe single use, maybe
Right.
like something that is tailored to one kind of particular group or person's needs, right?
Mm, mm,
Um, and like another example, right? I have a desk in a co-working space here
mm,
where I live,
mm,
and we um, we order lunch once a week. So
mm,
once a week we have catering deliver us
mm.
X lunches, right? So that
Yeah,
all needs to be organized, right? People need to sign up. Okay, this week I'm
yeah,
going to order one lunch.
yes,
They have to pay it and everything, right? How
yes,
nice would it be if you could just tell an AI, hey, I need a lunch ordering app. Can you build me a lunch ordering app?
right.
Because they're going through the process, like, I don't know, sending around polls in a WhatsApp group or
Yeah,
like filling out Google Sheets, that is all like extremely error prone and has a lot of overhead for the people who
yeah.
manage it. Um, I guess that goes in the same direction what you're saying, right? This kind of app doesn't have to be super sustainable, does not have to comply to like highest kind of engineering standards because it's
Hmm.
only meant to be used by, I don't know, 20, 30 people.
Right. Yep.
Um, and it's not going to be dealing with very sensitive data if you, right? And all of that.
Mm.
Um, I could see that becomes a thing. And that would personally make me very happy because I've, at times been frustrated um, with the fact that there are so many things that you could
Mm.
where you could build software to make an improvement, but then the cost of building that software would not outweigh the use that we get from it.
Right, right. And then often you're using, for example, some off-the-shelf piece of software and it works for a
Mhm.
number of use cases, but that's the ones that it's been designed for because of that calculus. I keep using the word calculus probably incorrectly. I did the cost benefit, but yeah, and actually for your particular case, actually you need like two or three different things, and you're not going to be served by because you're
Mhm.
one out of millions of people being served. So yeah,
Mhm.
yeah, it's interesting. I mean, it was Daniel Gwersman was on the podcast a while ago talking about a kind of an AI OS that in future you might have a system where there isn't a sort of a hard and fast UI, that basically the UI is developed on the fly by the AI, to meet your needs. I mean, I think we will need far more stable and competent AIs than we currently have in order to, realize that vision. Like you could have like an iPhone where basically you don't have any apps, you're just the AI is creating everything on the fly.
Mhm.
Could be a rather inconsistent experience. But yeah, yeah, I think it's an interesting time, isn't it? That more and more people can get involved in that coding activity. But so in the Ben Ritchie, who was on our guest last week, was talking about in his sort of startup context, they've kind of given up ownership of the code to the AI, and what they're
Mhm.
doing now, and that they he's saying that they've approached this very very carefully and step by step, but there's too much code being generated by the AI for it to all be reviewed by humans. And what they're doing now is they're reviewing the plans and the strategies and the testing
Mhm.
strategies, and they have hooks for all of the, this is exactly what all these systems must do, and there's whatever mechanism they've got to prevent the AI just fixing the tests so that they passed automatically. But that's, I guess, in this sort of need to stay alive, startup, fast prototyping world, I mean, it's a really interesting development. I certainly at my current company and in many places would not want to adopt that. But so, how far are you along the curve in terms of how involved the AI is, helping you create the code that you're delivering into production at the moment?
Yeah, I think as soon as you have a few hundred customers and you have a production database full of like really sensitive
Mm,
and I guess valuable data, right? At least to
mm,
those customers.
yeah,
And um, I guess handing any ownership of that over to AI is a very difficult
absolutely.
proposition, right?
Yeah.
Um, we are essentially using AI um, as an assistant in the coding phase. So
Mm,
we are mainly like the main tool we are working with is Claude Code and Cursor to some extent,
mm,
um, and mainly for coding itself. We do have some AI code reviews in the pipeline. They are not, to be honest, I so far I don't see them being that impactful. We do
mm,
insist on human reviews and use the AI as kind of, you know, it can it can and sometimes does point out things that the human reviewer would have missed. So in that
mm,
sense,
mm,
I think we use it as tool to increase the quality of reviews.
mm, mm,
Mm. And then another really good application of AI obviously is testing. So
mm,
especially building end-to-end tests, for example.
mm.
Um, uh, yeah, just helps you get the job done faster.
Right, right. Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, I'm kind of using Cursor extensively and have been for a while, and it's actually becoming quite rare that I write any code. I know a lot of people are still they're preferring to write the code themselves. Well, actually, some people have tried you know, the more generation, and then they've decided, no, actually, it's faster for me to write the code with autocomplete. And I think for certain sorts of UIs, like the time that it would take to code out all of the, like an HTML UI, like, get the AI to do that. And then even this is the thing, you can ask, as I think you were alluding to, you can ask the AI to set up an end-to-end test, and you can then go and inspect, right? This is checking that this thing will appear in the UI in the right place, and so on. And
Hmm.
so, I mean, there's always, I think, the danger that one can get these tests set up so quickly, and then it's like you've got to sort of hold yourself to, have I checked every single one is in the, and if you've made like loads of layers and there's these unit tests, I mean, this is what I'm sort of finding myself like this week is I've now got to hold myself that if I have used the AI to generate all of this testing code, I do now need to go and look at that very carefully, step by step, to make sure it really is testing exactly what it should be
Yeah,
testing. And it reminds me of the trouble of doing, like people saying, oh, I will write the tests after the code. And that was the advantage of TDD was that it meant that you couldn't accidentally not see the test passing. Yeah, how are you finding that? How are you managing that temptation? Like forcing yourself to, well, and I'll just another thing as well. There's an article been going around which is about how I think a lot of in some companies, people are developing generating a lot of code with AI, and then rather than necessarily carefully reviewing it so much themselves, they're kind of passing it off to a coworker in a big pull request, and kind of
hmm,
like, you know, sort of dumping it on other people who've then got these huge, you can generate far more quickly. How are you managing that temptation within your own
hmm.
company?
So I guess the temptation to not check the AI generated code carefully, right? So I mean, fundamentally, um, the our social contract is no matter if you typed every character yourself or if it was fully generated by some
Mm,
tool,
mm,
you take responsibility for the code that you submit, right? So
of
like
course.
the
Yeah.
expectations for an AI generated pull request are exactly the same as for a handwritten one.
Yeah.
Um, And then the second part, I think that is just what code review is for.
Right.
If the code quality isn't up to par, then somebody else should point you to that. In my experience, that is working quite well, like including myself, right? That has happened to me too,
Oh
that
yeah.
I submitted a test where I overlooked that I wasn't testing like
Mm.
a major condition that need to be tested. Um, and yeah, my colleague did find it and did point me to it, and I
Mm.
resolved to do better the next time, right?
Right. Right.
Um, it is cognitively like I feel it is something you have to get used to.
Mm.
Um, because I mean I used to do my thinking while typing sort of, right? You would start writing
Mm.
the test and then you're
Mm-hmm.
going like, okay, what are the conditions here?
Uh-huh.
And you would just
Uh-huh.
type them out. And this space and time for thinking goes away kind of if you have all 200 lines of testing code that kind of generated for you in a
Yeah.
second. And then you have to go back and do the thinking though.
Right. Right.
So it is a much more difficult situation to be a critical thinker in, I
Yeah,
guess.
it's definitely a different style of working is
Yeah.
emerging there. It's
I
yeah, I
mean,
mean,
and
gone.
the other thing is that yes, one thing I'm kind of, I guess, low-key worried about, right? As long as we have the social contracts, the code review and everything, I'm not
Mm.
super worried about it. But if I was turning control and ownership of my code base over to some AI tool, I would worry about the AI being deceptive,
Yeah.
because that is also documented that
Yeah. Yeah.
would write a test just so it would pass,
Oh, absolutely.
right?
Yes, yes, completely.
Yeah, I mean, there have even with some tools been documented cases where it would lie about test results and stuff like that. Um, not that AI is a deliberately deceptive, but I mean, I guess that is um, I don't know, you could call it a bug or like a
It's a definite risk.
resulting from the principle of how all these AIs are trained, right? That they want to show you a positive result rather than a negative one.
Yes, yes. I think it's definitely a risk. I mean, I think that was interesting about what Ben was saying is about having you kind of need the tests outside of the control of the AI
Mm.
so that it can't actually go and sort of fiddle those things. And how one achieves that, I mean, that's a sort of a special
Mm.
source. I mean, it's interesting because that like we've got these layers, haven't we, that we've been moving up. Like originally people were programming like switching ones and zeros on and off with switches, and
Mm.
and we moved up all these different layers. And I mean, I don't know, as some people pointed out, like the AI is like the step from say assembly language to C is different from like going from programming in Python to like letting the AI do all your Python programming for you. I think there's some, there's you can make the analogy, but there's definitely some differences. But I'm definitely finding it difficult to motivate myself to write things from scratch by hand now that the AI can generate so much of it.
Yes, that happens very quickly, doesn't it? Like,
Yeah,
um, yeah, just kind of dealing with all the boilerplate, you just
right.
lose all the patience that you used to have for doing that, right?
Absolutely, absolutely. But
Yeah.
let's maybe come on to the more the human side. You're the engineering lead or head of engineering, and you've got you're working with other developers. What's your approach to being a leader? What do you find works well for you? I think it's very very it's such a people who are leaders in the engineering space. You've got to deal with all the technical stuff, all the human stuff. It's a complicated balance to get right. What do you find works well for you?
I'm not sure. I went into a leadership role based on intuition, basically. I never had any kind of cohesive set of principles that I apply.
Hmm.
I think I'm trying to make my own, yeah, figure out what my own strengths are and make them work for me, right? So
Mm.
one is maybe being authentic. I have a really hard time
Right.
not saying what I mean.
Mm.
I
Mm.
mean, I mean, I have the same tendency as everyone to maybe sugarcoat things sometimes, maybe skirt
Hmm.
around difficult
Mm.
topics sometimes, but
Mm.
generally, if I feel, you know. something is important and it's important to get right, then I'm
Sure.
very clear of what I think about it.
Yeah.
And that is already, I think that's a very important quality
Hmm.
as a leader because um, otherwise people would just doubt you every word, right? They
Yeah.
would, if they're wondering if you're being kind of honest or yeah, if you mean what you say, or if you're just saying it
Hmm.
for political reasons or whatever, then
Mm-hmm.
I guess you have much less clout already.
Hmm. Yeah, no, I'd like to believe that that's the way forward. I think, ironically, in some situations, the leaders keep people guessing, and that gives them a an advantage of some kind. But I wouldn't want to work with those leaders generally. Myself, yeah, it's. I mean, I think for me on my side, like I think a failing on my part is I'm probably a little bit conflict averse, but then similarly I maybe end up putting too much pressure on people, not realizing that I'm doing so. So it's
Mhm.
like, yeah, it's not a great combo. Um, yeah, I think for me, I spend a lot of time working out what's the appropriate level of, pressure to apply. And I mean, that even sounds bad calling it pressure,
Yeah, yeah.
but
How confrontational you want to be? Yeah, that no, no, that has been a big part of my own learning journey as well.
oh yeah,
Um, and I think, I mean, I tend to, you know, you err on both sides, right? Or the kind of
right.
alternatingly or like randomly or whatever.
Mm, mm,
Um, I mean, one and that is like I think that's one of the first things I realized when I stepped into this kind of leadership position.
mm,
Um, that I was probably not being confrontational enough, and I should
mm,
I should do it a bit more, right? What
mm.
helped me a lot was radical candor.
Oh yeah,
Um, I think for me that was not. I mean, if you look at if you just look at the framework, right? So for people who don't know it, um, this it's one of these typical two by two
yeah.
matrix
Hmm.
models. And on one axis, you have challenge directly, and on the
Right.
other axis, you have care personally.
Mm, mm.
Um, and the idea is that you're supposed to challenge directly, but in a caring way,
Yes.
right? You
Yeah.
you should confront um, any people and issues like if that is necessary, right? But you should do it with empathy.
Mm.
Um, And yeah, that is sort of my North Star, right? Like you can go back and look at almost any interaction, and you can sort of think about, okay, where does that land on
Yeah.
the scale? Because really, you're not doing anyone a favor if you're skipping difficult issues entirely. You do want to
Yeah.
bring them up. In the end, these people will be mad at you for not bringing them up, right?
Mm,
Because in the
mm,
end, they
mm,
suffer the consequences of that.
mm.
If you did not tell them what you thought about their work or
Yeah.
what um uh, right and these even if you don't address them, these things tend to build up until they
Yeah.
become a big deal. um yeah, so that has been for me, that has been kind of a necessary kick in the butt, I guess, like a piece of bit of motivation.
Yeah. Yeah.
um
Absolutely. Yeah. Radical Candor by Kim Scott. Yeah. I've got the diagram up and yeah, looked at this before. It's a good one. Yeah. I mean, I think that the particular weird thing for me is that like, I'm sort of that confrontational averse, but certainly in the past have been not. I've kind of actually people outside from the outside perspective would not say that I'm confrontationally averse because I seem to get into these confrontations, but I get into the confrontations accidentally because I'm not necessarily, I'm just sort of saying what I think. So it's a bit strange, and I think the so maybe a good place to be is where you are being intentionally confrontational, but in the right places. And I think then the thing that's been, I think, a big journey for me is learning about what rubs people up the wrong way. And I think particularly working with engineers and developers is this kind of even saying a small thing can translate into quite a lot of pressure. So it's almost like one needs to, and when I
mhm.
say a small thing, like you've got to be quite careful with the number of times that you repeat a thing. like I mean I've got an example in my book which is how to interact with humans after spending a lot of time with computers where if you like we have we're lousy with all these different media like you've got DMs and you've got like PR requests and all of these things and if you put the same comment in too many places and you might be thinking well I'm just trying to make sure that they see it but then they can end
Hmm.
up being like the same person gets those three comments of the same thing and they feel like why are you telling me this so it's like I think it's working out how to communicate intentionally and effectively through all the different media we have available is a real skill.
Yeah, absolutely. But I mean, on the other hand, like I get the example that you just mentioned, but at least personally, my experience has been that people tend to under communicate more than over communicate, and that
Agreed.
they, the more problems are created by the fact that people are not making their point of view kind of or communicating it in enough places, right? Like many
Yes.
people somehow have this assumption. Well, I had it, I said it once.
Right.
Uh, it must have been understood, right? And
Yeah.
if somebody didn't understand it, I don't know, right? Somehow their fault they weren't listening, or
Hmm.
they
Hmm.
don't get it, or they're ignoring
Yeah.
me,
Yeah.
or whatever, right? Um, and that yeah, I get that it's also a balance to strike there, and
Yeah.
I guess pressure is another thing, and maybe that is something I do sometimes. Also, accidentally, that's another side of trying to be authentic is
Right.
that, right? Sometimes you put yourself somewhere in a position where you're just stepping on people's toes, or getting on
Yeah.
people's nerves, or putting more pressure on them than you intend to, just by the way you are trying to get things across.
Yeah, yeah. No, and I completely agree with your point about, often the problem is under communication. I think the way that is it square that circle or it's partly about communication being acknowledged. So the danger is, for example, in a single day or in a short period of time, that you send the message multiple times because
Hmm.
you're worried that it's not going to get through. Whereas I think that the middle ground is sort of like sending the message, and if it's not acknowledged, then bring it up the next day, or what it's working out what those time periods are where you can kind of like okay this because messages can get lost right that you put into Slack and all these different things it's like it's working out what's the time period to wait before repeating it's all I maybe make it more complicated than it needs to be but let's yeah fascinating to talk to you about the topic of leadership there. Let's move on to our next question which is about what's your most exciting tech hack. I mean you've already mentioned a number of tools that you've got in use. Is there something recently in the last month or two? I mean, the landscape of AI tools, or even, I mean, this could be, you found a new thing for working in your garden or for learning languages. But is there some like tech hack that you're particularly excited about at the moment?
Not so much, no. I actually privately I'm not that much of an early adopter of tech
Right.
things.
Hmm.
Um the last smartphone I had before it finally broke, I had it for almost 10 years.
Oh yeah.
Like our home IT here runs on Linux computers. They also get updated like once a decade.
Right.
Um, so not that much. I wonder, like among all this AI hype, if we're gonna see um, so this hack, right, of scanning in documents and having a transcribed or something like that. That is something that is now much more easily accessible. I don't
Right.
think people who are um, kind of only following along on kind of AI stuff on the media
Yeah.
fully understand what is possible there now and have figured out all the
Mm.
ways that could help them. Um, that is one thing I'm kind of looking forward to, and also always have to keep reminding myself um, to consider, right? Is
Yes.
actually actually you can look at almost any digital workflow that you have. I don't know, reminding people to join a Zoom call at a certain time, right? Sending them
Uh-huh.
reminders. I don't know. I haven't figured out a way to do that yet because I
Hmm.
cannot get any of those pipeline tools to go into my email inbox and send emails to the right people, or they are run by
Hmm.
companies whom I don't want to give access to my email inbox. I don't know. But
Hmm.
um, I mean, those kinds of things, I think they're going to be interesting for me, and I'm really looking forward to seeing more open source tooling that I can use without sending data all over the place.
Yeah, yeah. I've definitely got some email workflows that I feel like that AI should be quite good at doing. I had been experimenting with just like local stuff on my laptop to access my Gmail account and do orders, like for a comedy night that I run. Um, yeah, I mean, I was very impressed with the email interactions I had with OpenAI's kind of like support bot. I mean, it didn't ultimately solve my problem, but I really felt heard as we went backwards and forwards. And I mean, I try and manage all these like comedy nights, so the email overhead is getting a bit out of control. I mean, just I'll mention that I remember the other one that I had is sort of like my, not tech hack, but life thing is that I was trying to work out how to use a Nespresso milk foamer the other day in the office kitchen, and I think having the smartphone with the photo and GPT-5, and I took the photo of the device, and it was able to tell me, it's got all these icons on it,
Hmm.
and I don't have it's a work thing, I don't have the instruction manual, and it's able to tell me what all those things do, and I was then able to use it more effectively as a result. So yeah, I think there are little ways in which it will seep in. But so then we're running out of time. What do you see as the future of AI going forward? I mean, you obviously kind of invested in it like for software development support and for prototyping at work. I mean, there's this huge AI hype at the moment. Where do you see it all going in 2 and 3 and 4 years?
Yeah, that's a good question, right? And I think there are um, two different answers. So one is what is going to happen with the current wave of AI development that is heavily based on LLMs.
Mm,
Um, um, it's super hard to say, but it looks to me um, like the potential there is ultimately somehow limited. Like I don't know where exactly the limit is
mm,
going to be, but I
mm,
do think this technology is going to max out um, at a point. And I'm wondering, like, I don't think that is the thing that will somehow take over the world,
mm, mm, mm,
um, or even, you know, I mean, this, yeah. Um, so that is what I think. Like, what I see in software development is this is a tool that can give you good productivity advantage some of the time.
mm, mm.
And probably there are more use cases like that. I don't see that those use cases are everywhere. I don't see that they solve the fundamental problems of, I don't know, human existence.
Right.
Um, so I think that's what it's going to be. I think we will view them as tools and get used to them just like we got used to smartphones, the
Mm,
internet,
mm,
and
mm,
everything. And which doesn't say that I mean, the internet in the end changed society quite drastically. It
right.
doesn't mean that we won't see the social changes, right? That
Yeah,
that
yeah.
that just occur when AI generated text is everywhere and so on.
Mm, mm,
Um, and then AI, I mean, there might be other technologies in the future, right? That
mm.
go like I'm convinced that there will be technologies in the future that go further than LLMs are
Right.
going, but
Mm,
um, I think it's hard to see. Like I think this is the kind of thing that is really, really hard to predict because
yeah.
there could also very well be sort of another AI winter, right? There could
Right.
be a loss of interest. There could even be a sort of backlash.
Right.
Um, and then you don't know. This could go to like uh, the whole topic of AI could go back to universities for another 30 years of fundamental or foundational research, right?
Right. Yes. Yes. And I hear what you're saying there. It's I mean the I guess I sort of, from my experience at my last company, where the kind of data extraction from messy documents was just fundamentally changed by LLMs. I mean, it feels like that's unlikely to go away. I just wondered, um, in your own in Kogaya, is AI forming a part? Like, obviously, it helps you develop the software to an extent.
Mhm.
Is it for like part of that analysis that helps present, companies with their carbon footprint and so on, it's not really involved there. That's still, kind of like your company's.
No, actually, our product is like some of its USPs are like, or actually, AI support is one of our USPs. So this document extraction use case that I was talking about,
Right,
that
right.
is like one of our core AI features where you would,
Yeah.
so let's say, because what does it mean to compute your carbon footprint, right? It means um, you have to enumerate all economic activities because each of those activities has a footprint.
Right,
Um, and so you have to collect data on everything the company did in a given year,
right,
um, including things like business travel, including things
right.
like
Mm.
buying stuff, furniture, computers, whatever,
Yeah, yeah.
including things like electricity for your office buildings and heating
Mm,
and
mm.
all that stuff. And one way to gather this data is through invoices because that is
Right.
how they are documented anyway. So
Yes.
that is the document processing I was talking about. I would read,
Yeah, yeah.
for example, if I'm going to Munich, right, to meet at the office with my
Hmm,
colleagues,
hmm.
um, I can later upload my train ticket and it
Yep.
will extract the distance that I traveled. It will
Right.
recognize that it's a long distance train ticket and it will
Mm.
assign a certain amount of CO2 emissions to it
Right.
based on that.
Right. Right.
So, um, yeah, that is, that on the one hand, that is an AI feature, and there's an LLM in the background doing this.
Yeah. Right.
On the other hand, it's a pretty narrow use case, right? It
Right.
does one thing, and it does that pretty well. Um,
Mm.
and then another use case in sustainability management is just there's huge amount of text transformations that you have to do. You have to report on your company policies on all kinds of things, right?
Mm.
Wastewater
Mm.
management,
Mm.
biodiversity,
Hmm.
um, uh, and those documents may or may not exist somewhere in your organization, right?
Right.
If they don't exist, you probably want to write one at the time of you writing the report.
Right.
And then you need to summarize what those policies say.
Right.
So that's a text transformation task you read.
Mm. Hmm.
And you can implement this in any level of at any level of scale. Finally, maybe you want to be at a place where you just point the tool to, hey, here's my Google Drive.
Right. Right.
Find my biodiversity policy. It's somewhere in there, right?
Yeah.
Good
Yeah.
luck.
Yes.
Um, that's not how we're approaching it yet, but this is where I
Mm.
see this
Mm.
this kind of
Mm.
thing could go eventually. And that, because this kind of data collection and putting it in the right format, in the right place,
Mm.
right, um, is one of the big kind of menial tasks that a sustainability
Yeah.
manager does. And
Right.
sort of our mission as a software company is to free them from that so they can work on the actual sustainability.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. Yes. Oh, that it
And
reminds me. We were talking to. Oh gosh, see my memory for now. As we get more, I need an AI to help me review. I think it was John Leslie we were talking to, and he's at Vodafone, and he was just like, they have huge core, internal intranets with all of this stuff, and being able to have the LLMs pick out, the needed documents is a lifesaver. He was saying,
mhm.
yeah, great stuff. Oh, and that brings us to our final question. What does it all mean? This life, the universe, and everything. How do you make sense of this strange world we wake up to every day?
Again, something where I don't have a very rigid framework. I think that is the first thing that defines me, maybe. Um, to to have an open mindset and um, be open for new things. And then I try to apply my intuition. What do I think is making the world better? And I
Mm.
try to do more of that. And um, that is like I'm not sure if that counts as a purpose in life. Um, but it does help me. Um, it, yeah, in the end, what I try to maximize is um, how much can I contribute, and I think I only have myself to go by. Um, what is the kind of world I want to live in? Try to get at least a tiny bit closer to that.
Brilliant. Sounds wonderful. Fantastic. Seb, it's been an absolute pleasure. If people want to chat with you, reach out to you, where should they look online?
I think the easiest way nowadays is LinkedIn.
Yeah.
You'll just find me by my name and then you can just send me a message.
Yeah, good stuff. Brilliant. Excellent. Well, thanks everyone. That wraps up this episode of AI Leadership. If you'd like to be on the podcast or join the Rebel AI community that it all started from, please don't hesitate to reach out to me, Sam Joseph. That's sam@neurogrid.com. My email and of course the links will be in the show notes and will be in your ears again real soon. Finally, big thanks to our guest today, Sebastian Beschke.
Thanks.